welcome to another segment of Immigration Issues hosted by the Haitian American Museum of Chicago. My name is Danette Frederic. You can visit the Haitian American Museum at 4654 North Racine Avenue in the Uptown neighborhood, and feel free to check out our website at www.hamoc.org or give us a call at 773-213-1869. Today I am pleased to welcome Troy Peters. He is a representative of the Audubon Great Lakes, which is a regional chapter of the National Audubon Society, which is an organization that fosters healthy ecosystem and communities and human communities. So he's here to tell us a little bit about the organization and what the mission and purpose is and how it relates to human immigration and migration. So welcome, Troy.
Thank you, Danette. So talking about Audubon Great Lakes as an organization, we are, as you said, a regional office of the National Audubon Society. The National Audubon Society is a 110-plus-year-old advocacy organization that is primarily concerned with protecting birds and bird habitats, and with the idea that protecting those habitats is important for the birds and for people, the communities that live near them as well. Audubon Great Lakes, as a regional office, we work with 5 states: Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, and Michigan. We support conservation work and general education, engagement with ecology, and just getting people engaged with issues pertaining to the environment. And we also work with chapters in our region. We have 58 chapters in those 5 states that are that represent 60,000, more than 60,000 members. So my role, I'm an engagement manager for Audubon Great Lakes, and I work to both engage and figure out ways to focus and enhance the work that our chapters are doing on the one hand, and then on the other hand look to build new audiences and connect with more people. As an advocacy organization, ultimately we want people interested and invested in natural spaces that obviously benefit them but also benefit birds, and so that is a particular charge of mine, and that's one of the reasons why I'm interested in these topics of questions of immigration, diverse communities, connecting people for whom maybe birding is not the top of their list of activities to do or commitments, but that the same things that affect birds, that birds benefit from: clean air, clean water, quality landscapes and environment. Those impact people too, and so figuring out where those things connect and how do we broaden the circle of people invested in this work.
So why is it that, because I'm sure obviously a lot of species can reveal the current condition of our environment, why are birds a particularly important indicator of our environment's health as opposed to like any other species?
So birds are a very good indicator of environmental health for a couple of reasons. The main one is since most birds migrate at least some distance to avoid cold weather and to find food for breeding, they interact with a lot of different habitats over a long space. In Chicago, we have more than 300 different species of birds that come through the area. I'm forgetting the exact numbers, but the majority of those migrate, start anywhere from Florida to the Caribbean to Central America and even South America, and go to Canada often. And so all along that chain, there are different habitats that they need food, they need water, they need places to shelter and rest, and to the degree that those kinds of spaces aren't available, they suffer. But when when we see a bird species is declining, we know that, some water areas have either the kinds of plants that are in the water have changed, the quality of the water has changed, different kinds of forests are affected somehow, that there's less trees in different places. So if we see a bird population decline, we can look at that whole swath of area that they traditionally go to and start to discover where is the problem on this chain, and how does that, what are the larger effects that could pose.
Cool. And so if birds are a good indicator of what's happening, bird migration is key to determining what's happening in the environment. And then also I guess the environment then affects human migration and immigration. And for example, you see things recently about how Greenland is disappearing, or the Marshall Islands, or Greenland is melting and the Marshall Islands are disappearing. And they seem kind of dramatic, or maybe some people think it's sensational, but I mean, to an extent, those things are true. And how does so just talk a little bit about that, how the environmental changes are affecting human movement.
Yes. So before I get to the human movement,
Sure.
I'll say, the second piece that's very much related to your question, that what makes birds a good indicator of environmental health is related to climate change. There's the old expression about, or not expression, the old practice that miners in England would do of taking a canary in the coal mine, and if the air was getting bad to breathe, the canary would die, and so people knew to leave. There's a way that birds, as a segment of animals, play that same function, where we, like I said, this seeing the whole chain of habitats and environments, how they're doing along those in those different spaces can impact us as well, but particularly around climate change, the different changes in temperature, different levels of water, those change the plants in an area, that change birds are, if a particular species needs a certain kind of plant that grows in marshy areas, or it's a certain tree that needs a certain amount of cold months to warm months, or things like that. If those climate conditions start to change, then the birds will suffer. But seeing those changes lets us know that something is happening, and for people that's important. Especially one of the things that's been hard with climate change is getting a broad swath of people to understand and connect to it. And things like polar bears are a powerful example, but polar bears don't live everywhere, and
Right.
so whether or not a certain type of hummingbird or or warbler, just different kinds of bird species, those are things that different people might have a stronger connection to, and so when that gets lost, then they notice it and want to do something about it. That, so that's the bird side. The people side, of course, is that, those same things, the change of temperatures, the same change in water levels, if people are on an island or on the coast and water levels rise, their habitat, the place they live, starts to get eroded, and they have to move somewhere else, or they have to find some other means of supporting themselves, and if they can't do that, then they're in trouble. And so, there is a way that, not to make too, I think can get a little, a little cute to have the parallel between bird migration and people migration. But ultimately, birds are migrating to find resources, a place to raise their young, conditions that are more favorable for sustaining themselves and for surviving. I think the same can be said in understanding migration among people, that people are seeking better opportunities, and in the face of dramatic environmental change, whether it be droughts that make farmland untenable, unworkable, that encourage farmers in the Mexican state of Michoacan to have to seek work elsewhere and ultimately come to the United States, they're migrating, their habitat is affected, their local environment is affected, and they need to seek opportunity, better way to maintain themselves and their families. So yeah, I think there's a strong parallel in that regard, and so that's not the only thing, of course, that influences migration, but that is a kind of critical place where the two issues intersect.
I see. And does Audubon Great Lakes, obviously you're focused on the birds and like the ecosystems, but what does the organization do to address the broader issues of climate change that may affect humans and stuff, or does the organization?
Yes, write down the dates exactly, but 4 years ago, I think, let's say 3 or 4 years ago, we really, there's a pretty substantial report that National Audubon released looking at climate change and its effect on birds, for this very reason, as I described, to provide a face to the changes. And that study looked at over 500 species of birds that spend some time in North America, and found that over 300 of those 500 species were threatened by climate change. And so, in order to address that, doing a host of different kinds of work, both here in the U.S. and then with partners internationally within the Americas, to both monitor the health of birds and to try to do some interventions in maintaining habitats, whether that be buying the habitats or supporting different projects to get local engagement. In a couple of cases in the Bahamas, I know there's a project that works to support that kind of monitoring program, but then also help to develop some ecotourism kind of economic engines that would support that kind of work and place a more direct value on those birds and habitats for the people who live there, so that there's a reason to do it among all of the other reasons.
Right. So this report was about 3-4 years ago, you said?
Yeah, let's say 3 years.
Yeah. I'm thinking about like how the term climate refugees or environmental refugees has become kind of like a term in the mainstream vocabulary recently. Can you describe that term, or what it means, or how it emerged?
Yeah, that term, it's really speaking to kind of what I was just talking about of the ways that the changing climate, the dramatically changing climate that we're experiencing and seeing more and more, how that affects areas where people leave and make it more difficult for them to stay there. The kind of more recent identification and classification of climate refugee or environmental refugee, it's not really a new thing. It's been maybe we haven't necessarily thought of it that way, but environmental pressures are one of the things that have always sent people moving. But of course, with this greater level of threat, and it's not just internationally. There's coastal cities in the U.S. it's been towns mainly that have been eroded, and people have to move, and since it's been mostly thus far small towns in places like Louisiana, that people are not, they're not wealthy people, so sometimes those kinds of stories don't get a lot of attention, and protecting those towns are, that's not the highest priority. But that's one of the big threats and one of the big calls to action, I think, in the last few years that have driven things like the Paris Accords, is the recognition, things like Hurricane Sandy in New York, that these are $1 million homes being washed away. That starts to make people think, what is the economic cost of this?
Yeah. So another major environmental issue that I'm linking to birds, for one, and then also obviously humans, because these things affect all creatures, is deforestation. So can you talk a little bit about areas or regions that are challenged by issues of deforestation and what the effect of that is on bird communities, on human lives, and what can be done?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, I think in terms of climate change, we see rising sea levels, we see more intense storms. I mentioned Hurricane Sandy. We can also talk about Hurricane Matthew in Haiti. But then things that come, particularly in Haiti, that's compounded by the fact that there's just been lots and lots of trees cut down. I believe I saw a statistic that 98% of the forests have been cut down, and that, for people, it affects them. Well, it affects them in several ways, but not the least of which it means that you have mudslides, and the trees, the roots. Those are the things that prevent some of the cataclysmic kind of levels of devastation that hurricanes we see hitting a place like Haiti. How does it affect birds? In the Caribbean islands in particular, there's certain species that migrate and there's certain species that don't. And particularly for those that don't, when the forests that they live in are destroyed, then that's their habitat. They don't have any place to go. There's a couple of species in Jamaica that have faced that problem. There's a Puerto Rican parrot. That's what it's called. It's not a Puerto Rican parrot. It's a Puerto Rican parrot. And they, that faced a threat from deforestation on the island of Puerto Rico, and there was a big effort in the last 20 years to save that bird and save the habitats for that bird on the island, and largely successful. But then now we're having the challenge of the way climate change is changing the moisture, changing different factors in the environment there. That is, a species that was seen as a success story is now threatened again. Right. With a place like Haiti that has probably seen the worst kind of deforestation issues in the Caribbean, it's hard. I don't know what kind of information there exists about how it's impacted bird habitats, because I think there's several other there's several issues that take precedent in looking at what's going on in Haiti, and so I don't know that anybody's really looked closely at how that deforestation is affecting them. So
reforestation is obviously something that environmental organizations are taking on. I think in the Dominican Republic, reforestation has been a huge project in recent years. What is obviously it sounds like you just plant trees. Is it that simple, the whole process of reforestation? Or?
Yeah, it's in certain ways, yes, it's that simple. It's planting trees. In other ways, it's complicated in terms of, especially in tropical environments, the soil quality and different things, how long it takes certain species of trees to grow and how long it takes certain habitats to re-establish themselves can be a challenge. So it's a delicate process, but one that with commitment and dedication can be accomplished. And it's a challenge. I think the issue of deforestation and reforestation in developing economies it's not a clear-cut issue, because of course in Haiti and to a certain degree the Dominican Republic, the main thing the trees are being cut for is for fuel, for fire, and people need these things to survive. So there's a balance and or thinking differently about how to resource and develop an infrastructure for the economy, so people can survive without needing to, without having that threat, because you can't. The biggest challenge probably with forestry projects is policing them. You can't have people there all the time. You can't have rangers all the time. So decreasing the impulse that people have to cut the trees down in the first place is one of the big things.
Yeah. So if anyone in the audience is interested in asking Troy a question, feel free to call 312-738-1060 to ask your question. We're here, we're listening. Yeah, I guess I can ask another one real quick about, because obviously things like deforestation and climate change, it's at this intersection of like socio-political issues and laws and policies and economic reasons why people are cutting trees and all that stuff. So what kind of policies are in the making, or do you hope to see in the making in the next few years that can, kind of change the way things are looking right now in terms of the environment?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the environment, there's, having just had the election, it's a big question mark of what the landscape will look like. So I think we're all kind of scrambling to figure out what the policy implications of things are. But I think locally, of course, efforts in the Great Lakes region, for example, we're really looking to focus a lot of our work on maintaining water quality. The Great Lakes collectively is the largest body of fresh water in the world, and it's an important, that is a pretty important asset, and we want to make sure that it's protected and that it's healthy. And one of the ways to make it healthy is to make sure that the wetlands that filter the water, keep it clean, keep the shore from getting eroded in different kinds of ways. The wetlands are an important habitat to maintain the quality of the Great Lakes, and they also are a very important bird habitat. So working to support those kinds of maintaining and sustaining those habitats is really one of our key issues that we'll be looking to work on in the next few years.
Cool. Yeah. Again, this is Immigration Issues with the Haitian American Museum of Chicago. You can visit our museum at 4654 North Racine Avenue in the Uptown neighborhood, or you can call 773-213-1869. And our website is up at www.hamoc.org. Yeah, so Troy, do you have any other things you want to say about the Audubon Great Lakes Society, and what are the next steps in the next couple of weeks, any events, or how people can get involved?
Yeah, one thing we'll be doing in early December, on December 11th, actually with the Haitian American Museum, we'll be doing an event there at the museum at, I'm going to say 11 o'clock. To look at the connection between art and nature, and the inspiration that different Haitian artists and different schools of Haitian art have looked at nature as an inspiration to help think about what are the different ways that different communities, but in this case, say the Haitian community, what are some of the ways that these issues are important and connect to the population in a more robust way.
Yeah, great. And if you want to find out more about that event, you can visit our website at www.hamoc.org, or visit the museum itself. It's open on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, and Sundays. And we are located at 4654 North Racine Avenue. So to find out more about that event, you can check out the website or drop by. So I just wanted to thank Troy for a great segment of immigration issues. Again, he's with the Audubon Great Lakes Society, and if you want to learn more about what that organization is doing, feel free to check out the website. What is the website, Troy?
It's greatlakes.audubon.org.
Cool. And yeah, thank you for tuning in at another segment of Immigration Issues. We'll see you next month on the second Wednesday. Yeah.